you're gonna learn exactly how to shoot epic adventure tourism commercials like this one. Recently, we shot a commercial for New England's largest network of mountain biking trails. It was an awesome experience, and we decided to actually capture the entire process from start to finish of how we planned, shot, and edited the commercial so we could create this video where we outline our top 6 tips for making epic adventure tourism commercials. So as always, let's dive into it. When we look at videos that as a whole are really engaging, a big part of that is because each individual shot is exciting, eye-catching, and just enjoyable to watch. So when you're filming action-based scenes, one way we make our shots engaging is to either capture or create movement with our camera. And this is exactly what tip number 1 is, utilizing movement as much as you can. Now, to display this even further, let's look specifically at a few shots here. Up first, we have a tripod shot where our subjects are jumping a pretty serious gap. Here, we're simply capturing movement. We aren't creating it with camera movement whatsoever. The bikers riding and the suspense of the jump is exactly why this shot is engaging. We're filming mountain biking here though, so almost every shot is gonna have this movement. In order to seriously level up our shots, we want to create additional movement by creatively moving our camera as well. Our next shot here was captured on the Canon 1DX Mark II mounted on the DJI Ronin S. By moving this rig in the opposite direction of the riders, we add a unique dimension to the shot. These two opposing movements, first off, make the bikers themselves look like they're riding faster, and it just adds this whole new level to our shot. We apply the same concept to drone shots all the time, basically flying the drone directly towards the bikers to accentuate their speed. Now, don't think moving towards your subject is the only movement you can use. Keep the concept of movement in mind, but diversify things as much as you can to add new dimension to the way your viewer is experiencing this scene. It's amazing how much a simple movement can enhance the engagement of your video. Whether it's a slight jib movement of the camera coming down, a tracking shot with the drone following the action, a pull-out movement giving the audience a clearer view of the environment. All of these things will help you create a next level epic video that hooks your viewer to the very last second.
Dude, this is next level.
Now, speaking of movement, tip number 2 will help you enhance movement even more, and that is to film with a foreground. You'll notice in a lot of shots, I'm filming with the gimbal underslung. What this does is bring the camera closer to the ground, or in other words, it makes our foreground way more apparent in the scene. In almost all of these shots, the foreground is the ground, no pun intended there, and anytime we have a big foreground, movement will feel 10 times more noticeable, making the scene more engaging. A slight push in with the camera at chest level and with no foreground close to the camera will look like a slight push in, nothing too crazy or exciting. For some scenes, this is exactly what you want, just a very subtle amount of movement. But with action or adventure-based videos, we want to make that slight movement much more noticeable. So when you get on location, be sure to look over your entire environment and look for objects you can film close to in the foreground to make your shots more dynamic. And that's exactly what I did in this shot. Instead of filming at eye level, I actually dropped the camera down so it was at the same level as the grass and slowly moved the camera. By having such a large, pronounced foreground in this scene, it makes that small movement look a lot more noticeable. With that being said, don't be afraid to get down and dirty. A lot of the times it does involve you getting down on the ground, in the leaves, in the muck, but that'll almost always make your shot better. And speaking of making your videos dynamic, tip number 3 is to destroy that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Obviously, this is a joke, but we are serious. It really does help us as a channel grow and reach more people. So if you're finding this information useful, it would really help us if you hit the like button. So tip number 3 is actually to follow the rule of multiples. Now, I don't know if this is actually a rule, but it's something that I really live by, so I'm just gonna call it a rule. And what this means is to film multiple takes of individual scenes from multiple different angles with multiple different focal lengths in multiple different frame rates. I know it's a mouthful, but it will help you level up so much. And this isn't just biking or epic adventure scenes. You really should apply this to almost anything you're filming. To make your scenes as irresistible as possible and so that your viewers just can't look away, you want to film something multiple times and cut all of those different takes together. At the end of the day, what this does is give your viewer a better perspective on what's actually happening, which makes your scene more immersive. Now this is pretty hard with mountain biking because it literally means we have our subjects complete a short run, they get off their bikes, they walk back up that run while carrying their bikes, and they do this again and again and again and again. And with that being said, I want to do a quick shout out to our two subjects in this video. First up, we have Adam Craig. He is a Team USA Olympic mountain biker. He's an absolute beast, and I want to thank you for being a part of this. And Josh Lawless, a member of our team at 14 Day Filmmaker, who's also an unreal mountain biker that was able to keep up with an Olympic veteran. Or, well, he almost kept up with him all the time. He did have one accident. Back to the lesson though, by doing each section multiple times, we can add a ton of variety to our shots and really give the viewer a much more immersive and interesting perspective of what's going on. We typically would film at least one tight shot, one medium shot, and one wide shot. We'd also get 1 to 2 drone shots of each run. Every time we do an additional run, I would always think to myself, how can I capture this scene in a way that is completely different than the previous take? If I did the last take moving towards our subjects while they were coming at us, maybe the next one I would follow behind them, or I'd look straight down on them. This is a huge thing that separates amateur filmmakers from professionals. Most amateurs only have one camera, so they only film one take of a given scene, but don't let that be your excuse. In fact, on my Instagram profile, I asked people how many cameras they thought I used to film this one sequence, and some said upwards of 16, while in fact we only had 3. This is the power of filming the same action multiple times. You can trick the audience into thinking you have multiple cameras, even though you may only have one. Now moving on, tip number 4 is another thing people tend to forget about when filming outside, and that is to use natural lighting to your advantage. To add more context to this, I would have to say one of the hardest things to decide on when filming anything is where the heck do I actually put my camera? I could put it here or there or there or there or really anywhere, but how do you actually decide on what's best? For me, especially outside, it all comes down to composition and lighting. We don't have a lot of control on the lighting when we're outside, so in effect, it controls us. Our entire 3-day shoot was dictated primarily by where the sun was and when it was gonna be there. This meant waking up at the butt crack of dawn to film during sunrise when it was like 25 degrees outside.
We are at the first location for the day. Sunrise shot with the drone. The sun will rise right in between this river, which is gonna look amazing. We woke up very early. We knew that sunrise about 6:30. The screen doesn't work with the gloves. Yeah, that's a pro tip. If you're wearing gloves, use your nose.
Taking a break during midday when the sun is high and unflattering, and then coming out again to film as the sun was beginning to set. On top of that, we would almost always film with our cameras pointed towards the sun. This backlights our subjects and really helps them stand out in the scene. And from a visual perspective, it's just much more engaging than filming in the opposite direction. When you film with the sun in front of your subject, it can just make your scene look muddy, things don't stand out quite as much, and there isn't as much dynamic range. On top of that, if you film pointing into the sun, you also have the potential to get those beautiful solar flares. Now, if you're filming interviews outdoors or close-ups of people, another tip for natural lighting is to find shade or wait for cloud cover. This is gonna help diffuse the light and soften that harsh sunlight on the face of our subjects. You could even bring a 5-in-1 diffuser to block out some sunlight, to bounce it in different directions, to diffuse the light, and so on. Okay, now tip number 5 is a huge one that I struggled with for so long, and that is to never forget storytelling is everything. With every video you ever shoot, you want a distinct beginning, middle, and end. If there isn't any slight sense of narrative whatsoever, your viewer will eventually get bored and stop watching your content. As filmmakers, we are constantly consumed with the goal of capturing the most cinematic content we possibly can, and sometimes that comes at the cost of sacrificing story. We want the trendy transitions and the amazing color grade and the most cinematic movements, but we forget that the majority of people who will watch our videos aren't actually filmmakers and they care way more about the story of your video, not the transition preset pack that you use to get that insane effect. With this commercial in particular, we follow the journey of a novice couple renting gear, getting on the mountain for the first time, and enjoying a romantic vacation together, and ending their trip at a nice outdoor fire. We contrast that narrative with the experience of the expert riders, cruising down double black diamonds, hitting jumps, and celebrating their accomplishments, all the while sprinkling in relevant interviews of our subjects to add even more context. And since this is a commercial, the interviews are where we're able to actually throw in our direct sales marketing message. Now, I would say one of the biggest struggles I hear across the board with filmmakers is that they struggle with storytelling. My advice to overcome this obstacle brings us to tip number 6, which is to plan as much as you possibly can when shooting anything. What I see so many people do is decide they want to film something, go out and film it in the most cinematic way that they can, and then they get to the editing process and they struggle hardcore trying to create a story based off of the random footage they got that did look cinematic but had no story to it. The issue here is storytelling always needs to come first. Shooting and editing comes second and third. And even though this sounds so obvious, I know personally I forget this time and time again. When I first started filmmaking, I focused a ton on practicing, just going out and filming as much content as I could. I would text a friend and say, hey, let's go on a hike. I'd bring my gear, I'd film the hike, and then I'd get into the editing room and be bummed out when the final product still felt like it was missing something compared to all of the videos I loved watching on YouTube. This is great practice for the technical side of getting beautiful shots, but bad practice for the potentially more important skill set of directing narratives. Even if you're just filming your dog playing outside for practice, make sure there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to that journey. To take this step even further, when you're filming big commercials, 50% of your time should be spent planning. Believe me, it'll make the final product 10 times better, and it'll actually make the process of filming 10 times easier. On this particular shoot, we knew exactly when and where we were going to film each individual scene. We knew exactly who would be there for us to film at each scene, and we knew exactly what they were gonna say in each interview. We spent hours and hours watching mountain biking videos, documenting which shots we liked, the angles they filmed from, the focal lengths they used, and so on. All of those notes we took helped us make our commercial that much more streamlined when it came to the filming process. Then on set, if something didn't go according to plan, we always had contingencies set up so we could just move on to the next segment as fast as possible. This way, with the limited time we had on the mountain, we could be as effective and streamlined as possible. So long story short, you accomplish the heavy lifting of storytelling in the planning process, and don't ever forget that. And to build on that even more, the heavy lifting of the entire process of filmmaking is primarily done in the planning process. So really, don't ever forget that. And that does it for our top tips on shooting epic action-based commercials. We could probably talk forever about all the different things that go into shooting an adventure commercial, but if you'd like to see the full behind-the-scenes job shadow, where we walk through scene after scene in this commercial and share the camera gear we use, the settings, the composition, the lighting, every single detail of getting the different shots, and on top of that, a full over-the-shoulder screen share of how we edited this entire commercial start to finish, adding music, assembling a sequence, sound design, and color grading, then you'll want to enroll in our program 14-Day Filmmaker. This is the most affordable way to learn professional content creation, and it is by far and away the most efficient program with no fluff tutorials covering every aspect of commercial filmmaking. We have over 100 video trainings, a ton of job shadows, and a whole series of really fun practice exercises that turn the theory of what you're learning into actual skills. We love YouTube, and it's a great resource for getting better at filmmaking, but it also comes at a big cost. You end up jumping from channel to channel, learning from this filmmaker and then that filmmaker, and although there are hidden golden nuggets in each video, you probably spend 5 to 30 minutes wasted in between each golden nugget. And the biggest issue of them all, you end up sifting through a ton of useless information rather than practicing. One of my favorite business quotes is, "Knowledge is not power, it's potential power." The only real power is in execution. We created 14-Day Filmmaker to solve this problem and give you what we call the straight line to professional content creation skills. Our curriculum of over 100 videos was carefully designed so that each video seamlessly leads into the next, and you develop these skills in the fastest time frame possible. And the practice exercises keep you accountable and make sure you're growing day to day. You'll be left with zero gaps in your knowledge as we cover every single step of the process. If you have any interest in this whatsoever, there is a link below this video, so check that out and see if it's a good fit for you. But finally, if you enjoyed these 6 tips and you want to see more content like this, please do me a huge favor right now and hit that like button and subscribe to us on YouTube. It'll help a ton with the YouTube algorithm, and we'll be able to get more content out just like this for you. After that, leave a comment below this video letting us know what type of content you want to see, and we'll be sure to add that to our list of content that we're going to produce. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.